by this stuff, and it just continues and kind of snowballs, and one conspiracy theorist cites the other conspiracy theorist, and it kind of goes on and on.
Trump was challenged on this one by Savannah Guthrie during the 20.
Bye-bye.
Sling TV is a better way.
That is how it goes. They quote each other and then start building on it with speculation and a little more speculation and a little more speculation, and you repeat. You repeat it enough, people start to believe it, and then it's ingrained in them.
The U.S.
All right, Aaron Mate on with Elton Brand. What the fuck? Yeah, right? No. Goddamn, Russell Brand. Jesus Christ, Elton Brand. I came here straight from work. I just started streaming right when I came home from work, so I have not ate. I have a little rundown from the day. All right. I'm going to grab something to eat.
And UK deliberately sabotaged peace deals to keep the war in Ukraine going. And if that's true, and there is evidence to suggest that it is, why would they do that?
Well, it's true according to multiple sources. The first hint of this came actually from sources close to Zelensky, who told a Ukrainian media outlet in May that after Russia and Ukrainian negotiators reached a tentative deal to end the war, Boris Johnson came over from the UK. And there's no doubt he was acting at the behest of the US, because the UK is a lackey of the US when it comes to foreign policy, and told Zelensky that, sorry, we're not going to back you up if you make a deal with Putin. And it's not the time to negotiate with Putin. It's the time to fight him. So that killed those talks. And since then, Putin has said a similar thing. He accused the US of wrecking a peace agreement. And Fiona Hill, who's a former White House Russia expert, also said that US officials knew that there was a peace agreement between Russia and Ukraine reached. So that's the evidence for it. And why they would want to kill peace is because, look, their goal is not to defend Ukraine. As Lloyd Austin, the defense secretary, said, their goal is to weaken Russia, to use Ukraine to bleed Russia, which has been a long-time goal of the U.S. And that's been made clear over and over. Lindsey Graham, the Republican senator, recently said that as long as we arm Ukraine, they will fight to the last person. So from Washington's point of view, Ukraine is not something to be defended. It's something to be used as cannon fodder against Russia.
Aside from the moment where you said that the UK was the lackey of the United States, I found little to disagree with in your argument, but I've still been well enough conditioned to feel a kind of flush of patriotic rage pass through my body. Aaron, has 6 years of propaganda nudged us as culturally into believing that it's futile to negotiate with Putin and Russia? And is it futile? Is there any indication that there is a diplomatic solution available that would be generally amenable?
It's definitely ridiculous to believe that there's no chance of negotiating with Russia when you have all these sources saying that there was a deal reached, and there's no reason why that can't be tried again. And yes, the last many years of propaganda where we've been told in the U.S. that Russia is basically responsible for all of our problems. Hillary Clinton concocted a conspiracy theory that Trump was a Russian asset. And then when she lost the election, blamed Russia for her loss instead of doing any real self-reflection. We've also seen Russia blamed for Hunter Biden's laptop. We've seen Kamala Harris say that Russia was responsible for the Colin Kaepernick controversy when he refused to stand for the national.
I did not know that. That is hilarious. They're trying to blame Russia for the Colin Kaepernick crisis? Oh, shit. I had never heard that. That is fantastic. Whew. All right. I had to take a second on that one. I did not know that one. That is great.
Anthem. We've seen Russia blamed for Black Lives Matter protests. There's nothing that can't be laid at the Kremlin's doorstep by the Democratic Party, or at least by the leaders of the Democratic Party. And so in that context, Russia is portrayed as this demonic existential threat that we can't negotiate with. And the one outcome of that is that you have no Democrats right now, even Bernie Sanders, even the squad, who are willing to stand up and say, why are we spending so much money on a neocon proxy war that is threatening the world? The former defense secretary and former director of the CIA, Leon Panetta, just came out and said that according to intelligence analysts that he's familiar with, they've upgraded the chance of a nuclear war to 25%. So according to them, there's a 1 in 4 chance of nuclear war right now as a result of this proxy war. But
what? We're up to a 1 in 4 chance of going to nuclear war with Russia because of the war in Ukraine. The war in Ukraine has a 1 in 4 chance in leading to nuclear war with Russia. Well, I think I need to start drinking again. Fuck me.
still, the propaganda here is so strong that won't force people to come to their senses and to say it's time for diplomacy. It's time to stop killing the negotiations that we've been blocking for many months now.
It's extraordinary to me that such a catastrophic risk could be countenanced rather than consider that. I mean, I don't know how you can be so powerfully motivated. I suppose it must be a kind of inertia, a kind of systemic inertia, Aaron. Do you feel occasionally that if you could pull your focus back to a kind of geopolitical or even cosmic perspective, like a vast and global perspective, that we might, on some level, think, oh, well, even though we are being tyrannized by a kind of a corrupt, neoliberal, American imperial project, that must be better than a Russian or Chinese iteration of the same, that there are sort of tectonic levels of diplomacy that are taking place, and that probably if we had to choose between what...
Well, I mean, China and Russia are pretty much allied against us at the moment. They haven't officially done it. And, I mean, if we go to war with China, they make all of our fucking computer chips for our missiles. So, are we going to go to war with China and then be like, can you keep making those for us, please? What's going to happen? They make all of our computer chips for all of our shit.
One model of tyranny, we would probably select the kind of more neoliberal, consumer-oriented one.
Well, look,
All right, fair enough. We've been on for a minute. Yeah, I mean, the proxy war is horrible, but the idea that they're going to escalate to nuclear war is fucking terrifying. Like, absolutely terrifying. That's going to give me anxiety for the next couple of days. Fantastic.
see Russia and China trying to take over the world. I mean, there are people who believe that they are, and that's why we have to spend all this money on the military-industrial complex and get engaged in a proxy war that risks nuclear annihilation. But I don't accept that premise. Russia and China are certainly repressive to their own people. There's no doubt about that. But I don't see them trying to set up military bases around the world. The U.S. is, what, 900?
Sanctioning China. Oh, man. They make everything. What the fuck are we? We're nothing. We're like a 70% importer at this point. They're a 70%, 90% exporter. Sanctions China. Fucking idiots. Oh, my God. They're stupid.
Military bases. They're not overthrowing governments and crippling them with murderous sanctions like the U.S. is doing in Syria, Cuba, Iran, Venezuela. You can go around the world. They're a threat to their own populations, but not to everybody else's. To me, there's no system more authoritarian than a U.S. system that says that we have the right to block Cuba from receiving
Goods.
Food and medicine. That we have the right to
just straight up capitalism. We block Cuba from capitalism.
try to destroy Syria's economy because Syria defeated a dirty war that we funded for 10 years in trying to overthrow their government. That to me is authoritarian. The right that we have the right to try to impose murderous sieges on populations that we don't govern. I mean, nobody in Syria or Venezuela or Iran voted for the U.S. So that's the current system that we have now. That's the one I'm concerned about. If Russia comes along one day or China comes along one day and tries to take over the world, I'll happily be on the front lines of fighting them. But we have to deal with the world as it exists right now. And right now, we are in a U.S.-led order. I mean, look, they've made very clear how little they care about Ukrainians while professing to care about their sovereignty.
Don't give a shit about anybody. Like the proxy war, we don't care about any of Eastern Europe. We don't care about any of the NATO countries on the border of Russia. It is all to provoke them. It's nothing to do because we want to defend them. We want to defend those Eastern European countries so badly.
This week, the Washington Post reported that U.S. officials privately believe that neither Russia nor Ukraine can win the war. But yet they're not going to try to push Ukraine to the negotiating table. Well, we don't have any leverage over Russia. We do have leverage over Ukraine because we're giving Ukraine billions of dollars worth of weapons. So under what conditions would you recognize that even that Ukraine cannot win the war, but still give them weapons and not push them to negotiate? Only if you view them with contempt and view them as cannon fodder. And that's how I think the U.S. sees most of the world.
So these two ideas, that it's a humanitarian war in order to protect Ukrainian people, it's terrible, the suffering, the bombing, of course it's terrible, and the idea that Putin is a monstrous madman seeking a global hegemony, that if he's not stopped, that we'll all be tyrannized. These are kind of tropes that are sort of trotted out in order to mobilize a national mood that is pro-war, because generally speaking, people don't want wars. Now we're beyond the era where it's, you know, American bodies in zip-up bags. And now there's just a kind of a financial argument for not getting involved in wars. But that argument has to be countered through the moral argument of humanitarianism and the fear-based argument of a potential global threat. But what you contest is that both of those arguments are completely bogus.
Yeah, look, anytime there's a U.S. enemy, the U.S. will always try to portray them as the next Hitler. Saddam Hussein, when the U.S. wanted to concoct the fake pretext for invading Iraq, that he had WMDs, was going to blow up the world unless we invaded, he was the next Hitler. Same with Bashar al-Assad of Syria, when the U.S. spent billions of dollars on a dirty war that supported an insurgency dominated by al-Qaeda, which the U.S. knew. Jake Sullivan, who is the current national security advisor, he wrote privately to Hillary Clinton in February 2012, al-Qaeda is on our side. But because Syria was targeted for regime change, it was fine to side with al-Qaeda and in the process paint Assad as this Hitlerian figure who had to be overthrown. So this is the playbook that happens every single time. The difference now is that we're doing it with a country, Russia, that has nuclear weapons. And that unlike, you know, Iraq,
has the second most nuclear weapons, has 70% of those pointed at American cities, has defense systems ready to go on a strike. Oh, why do we poke the bear?
Can really fight back. I mean, Russia is a huge country with nuclear weapons, which makes it all the more dangerous and all the more suicidal to engage in this policy.
Imagine, given those conditions, that they are willing to take that risk. Is this a kind of psychotic nihilism? Is it a kind of, as I said before, a systemic inertia? What does it mean, Aaron, when one of the few prominent anti-war, or at least peaceful solution voices, is Donald Trump? And how does that, again, move the needle when we're all trying to identify where we are on a sort of a political spectrum that's increasingly difficult to read?
The fact that Trump has been one of the few U.S. voices to call for diplomacy just underscores what a crazy moment we're in. Because not only has Trump said all sorts of crazy things, but also his own policies helped bring us to this moment. When Trump was president, while his opponents were calling him a Russian agent and fantasizing about P-tapes that Putin was blackmailing Trump with, Trump and his neocon cabinet, recall, he appointed people like Mike Pompeo, H.R. McMaster, John Bolton, diehard neocons, were implementing policies that actually helped bring us to this moment today. Trump sent weapons to Ukraine that Obama had refused to send because Obama, back in 2014, after his government backed a coup in Ukraine, realized that he didn't want to further inflame a proxy war that he helped start, and also didn't want to arm neo-Nazis because that is who was on the front lines of Ukraine's civil war that began after the 2014 U.S.-backed coup.
Watch entire episodes on demand for free.
Right. Cheerio. Ha! And then fucking Lee Camp doesn't get any commercials to start the show. Oh, Mint Press News doesn't get any commercials to start a show. They've probably defunded their entire channel, I'm assuming. Because, yeah, Mint Press News actually has something to say. But I literally can't tell you a part of this I don't want to watch. I was going to jump past some of the intro, so... But let's get to Greg Palast. If we don't know who Greg Palast is, Greg Palast has been doing investigative reporting on actual voter fraud, actual, votes that happen outside of any sort of jurisdictions. He tries to prove mainstream media right, prove mainstream media wrong, and show what actually is going on. He brought about the whole cross-check movement. And cross-check was a really big, like 3.5 million Americans purged from the ballots. And he has some stuff about the ballots being purged in Atlanta here. This is mostly about Georgia, but it is, he's been doing these all over, and he hits elections everywhere. So election integrity and new proof of election theft. And so, yeah, this is, I mean... There's none of this I want to cut out. I think we're going to go from the 3-minute mark to the 1-hour mark.
So you didn't call him, but you challenged his right to vote or have his ballot challenged.
No ballot. Mr. Chairman, you have been challenged.
Is this an attempt to remove a lot of Democrats, black people from voting?
Get out of my house now.
Voter fraud.
Law enforcement is going to the houses and places of employment and making people afraid to go out and exercise their rights.
And today to come out and not be able to vote, it bothers me to my core.
My life is on the line, I could go to prison. If I just commit suicide, this will be over.
Stop voter fraud.
They raided a voter registration office and tried to send all of these college kids to jail.
Call our voter fraud hotline.
Governor Kemp has signed that controversial election bill. He signed Senate Bill 202.
If you go back to the bill signing, you will see Governor Kemp sitting under a painting of a plantation.
Time to do something. If we don't get it back in November.
Brian Kemp is preparing to ban books.
Ban books?
My vote, not his.
Are you removing black voters from the voter rolls just so you can win this election?
The documentary, fall 2022.
There we have it.
He's going to talk about it tonight, but I might even do that documentary on Wednesday just because, even though they're going to go into all of it and all the information, but I don't know. It's a pretty important topic, I think.
Vigilante. And, I know that a lot of people joining us because many, hopefully, are fans of mine. A lot of them are not into the two corporate parties, but I think a lot of them, like me, want to see every vote counted because I, have long been a supporter of voting because the corporate rulers would love nothing more than for us not to vote or to have our votes stolen away. And so I'm in defense of anything that protects people's right to vote. And it was fought for years and years, which you get into brilliantly in your movie.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not, one nice thing about being a reporter in the Palast Investigative Fund on my foundation is that we're nonpartisan because I'm going to tell you, if you're waiting for political.
Like I said, this is going to be a really good conversation. I think it's time for a bowl. Got a few people on. Everybody smoke them if you're legal and got them. If you're in one of the states you can't, take a drink, whatever you got to do. I fantastic evening to have a buzz and think about voter suppression. Or be able to debunk your friends when they say voter suppression, and you can tell them, actually, instead of the bullshit hyperbole that you hear on mainstream media, Greg Palast, who actually investigated this shit, said, and here we go.
Party save your vote. Forget it. You save your vote. And the only reason why they want to shoplift your vote, throw landmines in your way of voting, is because it's valuable. So you don't, someone's stealing your car, you don't throw them the keys and say, here you go. You say, stop thief. In fact, and one thing you don't do, I love the term vote suppression. If your car is stolen, you don't say, my car's been suppressed.
I started with my little spiel because I knew he was going to do his spiel.
Right. I always love the garbage euphemisms for things like this. It drives me nuts.
It's like, what are they going to do? Start coming up with I won't even say it, like, cute names for lynching or something. I don't think so. Yeah, so we can't, it's hard to say things directly, which is why I have trouble getting back on the, like you mentioned, I was with BBC Television, Al Jazeera, and The Guardian. I had to basically flee the country to be able to report the news about my country. I mean, I can't get out. I mean, you're not going to see my bylines in the Washington Pravda or the New York Izvestia.
Yeah, I actually want to get into that more in a bit. Why we don't see you on those main channels, but let's dig into the movie first, and what you reveal in it. And it is important right now because there's literally a runoff going on right now in Georgia, and actually I'll show you an article.
Just happened this weekend, or they started voting this weekend.
So to begin with, why did mail-in ballots in Georgia plunge by 1 million?
Yeah, well, that's why they plunged by 1 million, because they're black ballots, and they had to get rid of the black voter. And so we had basically a great social experiment during COVID, where we actually made it easier to vote nationwide. We were mailing out ballots. We had ballot drop boxes. People voted by mail, and we ended up with 180 million voters, a monster record for America. So the thing is, though, in Georgia, you had a Democratic sweep where Biden beat Trump in supposedly redneck red state, and two very progressive senators, Raphael Warnock, the Reverend from the Ebenezer Baptist Church, and John Ossoff, who is Jewish, and that's harder to sell than African American even in Georgia. And they all won. It was a Democratic sweep. So they said, what do we do? What happened here? Oh, black people were able to vote. Well, so they had to stop that. So they passed a law. Brian Kemp, the governor, Republican governor, and the Georgia.
So they had to stop that. Like, I know it's not actually funny, but holy fuck. So they had to stop that. I mean, I know it's not funny, but it's fucking funny, right? Like, Jesus Christ. He's so blunt, it's funny. And he's done the research, so he's not throwing like ideas out. He's just saying, like, no, they stopped that shit.
It's like pass a law, SB 202, 98 pages of Jim Crow. And one of the things that put Warnock, Ossoff, and Biden over the top were the 1.3 million mail-in ballots, 1.3 million. And we have the numbers. They actually broke more than 2-1 for the Democrats. So you had 1.3 million absentee mail-in ballots, and they were overwhelmingly Democratic. And by that, I mean from African-American voters in the Atlanta area. So they just said, okay, well, let's stop them. Let's shut the drop boxes where they were putting their ballots. And so they literally passed this law, which said that if you are accounted, that you can only have one drop box for 100,000 active voters to put in your mail-in ballot or your mailed-in ballot. And remember, in Georgia, unlike other states, you have to have it at the voting office by election day, so you can't count on the postal service. So they removed, by state law, the only 4 counties out of 159 in Georgia that are affected are the 4 counties that make up Atlanta, or Black Atlanta, right?
This is so fucked. Like, you can't be... They did this shit in Phoenix, too, guys. Like, they're so fucking blatant about it. Like, oh, this one city in Arizona votes super Democrat, so let's cut the one city that votes Democrat super hard. Like, it's too freaking obvious.
So this is where, now, the 4 counties of Atlanta are majority non-white. The other 155 counties are 65% white. In Atlanta, the number of drop boxes dropped from 107 to 25. And in outside of Atlanta, the number of boxes rose under this law. It's amazing. They literally said black areas remove the ballot boxes, white areas, you have to increase the ballot boxes. As a result, and with many other things, here's the final number that you need to know. We went from 1.3 million mail-in ballots 2 years ago. Now in this election, down to 0.2 million. In other words, even if you went to our No Child Behind Left educational program, you know that there were 1 million votes, 1 million ballots lost. They were 2-1 Democratic, and so that's why Raphael Warnock is in a runoff with Herschel Walker, Trump's candidate, because he only won by 35,000 votes. But that's after 1 million votes basically disappeared. Now, that doesn't mean they were thrown in the ocean. A lot of people waited in lines. A lot of people brought in their votes other ways. But once again, that was just one of the literally, I would say, 200 new impediments to voting put in the way of people of color.
And again, he's not throwing out numbers like he's trying to elbow you in the face. He's throwing out numbers like, this is about how many steps they added to people. Jesus. I want to watch the documentary. I haven't watched it yet. I saw this interview, I want to say like 9 this morning. I watched it, and I want to watch the movie now. Maybe I'll watch it tomorrow. Actually, I'm going to pay for Government Seekers tomorrow and watch all the bonus material.
Yeah, and this is strikingly similar to what's been done in the past. I remember in Ohio, but also other places where they would cut the number of voting machines in black areas and Hispanic areas to tiny numbers, so people waited in line for hours and hours, and they're also making it near impossible to even wait in line for the hours you have to spend there, because as you mentioned in the video, but you've covered it more in the past, that Georgia made it illegal to serve people food or water while they wait.
Yeah, it's a felony crime. So what they did is they eliminate mail-in balloting. They eliminate early voting stations. And so you end up with these lines that are 3, 4, 5 hours long. And this is Georgia. So the Georgia heat, Wednesday, they'll be voting, and it's going to rain. But if you dare give someone a cup of water, a bottle of water, a slice of pizza while they're waiting in line, because I know Papa John's was handing out calzones for people waiting 5 hours. I got that. I caught the...
Papa John's doesn't even have calzones. What the fuck? I'm sorry, that's the worst part of this to me right now. I didn't hear that the first time. I was like, Papa John's and calzones. Oh, the papitas or whatever. Ugh, those are horrible. A good calzone is hard to find, and it's not from a fucking chain. I don't know why I got excited. My bad. Let's continue. Super my bad. Chain Papa John's. Ugh. Why did I think they were gonna have good calzone? Ugh. My bad.
Criminal camera, the Papa John's gang, the guys with the vest, the green and red vest, right? And handing out calzones. Literally, that's a felony crime. And it's just one of the many ugly and almost ludicrous tricks, but they work well. I mean, that's how Brian Kemp got elected governor in the first place in 2018. He removed, from our analysis, I was working with Al Jazeera and Rolling Stone, that we had 340,000 voters simply removed from the voter rolls on the grounds they didn't live in Georgia. And according to the experts working with the post office and with Amazon, which, believe me, they know where you live, those people still lived at their voting addresses. They just happened to be voting while black, including, by the way, you'll see in the film, Martin Luther King's 92-year-old cousin. I'm filming her as she's bounced out of a polling station. I went to this polling station because a lot of people were getting bounced. She was getting bounced. They said, listen, old lady, you can't vote here. You don't live in Georgia anymore. And so I went to the house that she supposedly didn't live in down the street. And there was a picture of her in that house with her cousin King having dinner with her. And so obviously she's been in that house at least 50 years.
It's so revolting, and it honestly does take you back to the times of Jim Crow. I mean, this is a ongoing 100-year process, over 100 years, where black people have been fighting for their right to vote. They eventually largely got it, and now in a variety of states, maybe Georgia's leading the charge right now, but they're being stripped of these rights in
Georgia is like ground zero for this in America. I don't know if they're like a testing center, if they're like a, like they're just ready to go and they don't even mind. Maybe it's what he just said. Maybe it's just because they have just the one city where it's a majority black city, and then the entire rest of the state is majority white, and maybe they feel like, fuck Atlanta. I don't think that, but is that what the state thinks? I don't know. Somebody from Atlanta, tell me.
You also covered your last movie was about interstate cross-check, which was designed to do essentially the same thing over many states. And I wonder if you could explain that to people, but also if you want to give an update on interstate crosscheck as well.
Well, okay. The bad then the good news, which is the bad news is that Brian Kemp of Georgia, working in coordination with a guy named Chris Kobach of Kansas, can't remember that name, just think KKK. Chris Kobach of Kansas, who's now was elected Attorney General again of that state. They came up with a scheme called interstate crosscheck, where they're cross-checking to remove voters who are voting or registered in 2 states. Now, if you vote in 2 states, by the way, it is a crime, Lee. So if Lee Camp is voting, if you're voting in Texas and you're voting in Florida, you're committing a felony crime. So they found a few felons, 7.2 million votes.
I only vote in Florida. I do not vote in Michigan. I do live in 2 states, but I do not vote in 2 states.
Voters voting twice. Or I guess you should call 3.6 million voting twice. This massive voting crime wave. And you know what was interestingly, as you'll see in the film too, in Georgia alone, they found one guy named James Brown voting 538 times. Now, I can't make this up. This guy, James Brown, is a serial felon multiple voter. Now, I know what you're thinking. Hey, isn't James Brown kind of a common name for black people? Yes, but it's not a common name for Republicans. So you got to remember. So I'm laughing, but they removed hundreds of thousands of people in 30 states. And I have to say, after we did the movie and after I did my expose for Rolling Stone, and we got a bunch of lawyers and activists involved in it, and Chris Kobach lost his election in Kansas, and his successor immediately killed the entire program. So interstate crosscheck is dead and gone. But we have.
I want to give you even more credit. Trump tried to create a new position, basically the voter theft czar, and basically they had to get rid of it in a span of a few weeks because everybody was like, "Wait, you want us to just allow Chris Kobach?" And he appointed Chris Kobach to the post.
That's right.
You want us to take our state and let Chris Kobach knock everybody off the polls? Off the roll?
So what happened is that he did appoint Mr. KKK, Chris Kobach of Kansas, and as the vote fraud czar. We're going to hunt down all the fraudulent voters. And so he was, and the problem was he was trying to do this all in secret. And he doesn't realize that in our democracy, we have something called open government. So he's trying to run this like a CIA operation. So yes. So
sometimes we have open government.
yeah. Well, that's the headline. That's what it says on the package. When you open it up, who knows? Well, that's the whole point. That's what I've been doing. So I've been going back to Georgia for 9 years. Why? I mean, from when I lived in London, New York, now LA, and I'm heading right back to the airport now. Because Georgia is the kind of test kitchen for the Jim Crow recipes. And that's why I keep coming back to Georgia. So now.
Crazy. I mean, just absolutely crazy that we have a state that he can go back to and just keep going back to and proving shit right. Like, Jesus.
They got this new thing in SB 202, which was signed by this guy, Brian Kemp. Again, the only reason he's governor is that he removed Stacey Abrams' voters. And by the way, she cited my work and complained about it, which of course upset the Democratic Party. You heard Joe Biden say, don't vote for anyone who won't accept the results of an election, knowing that Stacey Abrams was on the ballot in a few days.
What do you think about the Democratic Party writ large and how, for the most part, they ignore your work and then occasionally they're straight up hostile to it?
Well, I don't think about the Democratic Party. I mean, again, I'm a journalist, and I work with all these voting rights groups like Black. In fact, by the way, if anyone's in Georgia, in Gwinnett County, I'm going to be showing the film free 3 times on Wednesday, and then we're going out to Valdosta and other the townships in Georgia, showing the film in churches with Black Voters Matter Fund.
Valdosta, that's where I stay when I drive north. It's the only reason I know that name. Oh, it's one of the roads on the highway. One of the cities on the highway with decently cheap hotels. Give it a shot, guys. Decently cheap hotels.
In of Georgia and the other groups. And so, I'm not, these are not, the Democratic Party isn't involved in any of these things. New Georgia Project, it's these voting rights groups that are bringing people out. Now, the Democrats, of course, don't mind because they collect the votes, but they're not on the front lines there. And, so I've had plenty of problems with Democrats. Now, it's true that the Republicans are they're the real virtuosos at the vote crushing game. But it's not like the Democrats don't do it. So it's very hard to point a finger if it's dirty itself.
Well, yeah, I think the difference is, generally speaking, and this is.
I love Greg so much. Just get up in there. He's great. And he's actually exposing shit that needs to be exposed. Like the real problem with voting, not the hyperbole or the speculation that freaking Mainstream media doesn't even investigate shit anymore. They just take AP poll, they take press briefings from other news sources, and then they give you 75% opinion. It's insane that they don't actually have journalists that work for these news stations. They just have anchors, which are failed actors.
Not a debatable fact that the Democrats benefit right now in the dynamics of our country when more people vote. That's the way it works right now. It could change in the future, but that's the way it works right now. So Republicans are doing everything they can to suppress the vote or vote thievery in the general. But the Democrats have been involved in their own shit with the primaries, which is why you ended up with that, the New York Board of Elections and pleading guilty in court to purging over 100,000 likely Bernie voters and stuff like that. So it's quite possible the Democratic Party, the larger machine, doesn't want to talk about your work because it just opens a whole can of worms maybe they don't want to address. I don't know.
Well, I have to tell you that, if you go to gregpalast.com and type in Bernie, you'll see the article I wrote. I did an investigation for The Guardian about the primary in California. And I did get a mention in the mainstream press. I got ripped up by the New York Times, and who made up quotes about things I never ever said. But that's the Times. So
they're good at that. They have quite an imagination.
They must have had a great source because they talked about what I said, but they actually never once talked to me. But that's okay. So what happened in California is that in California, you have to have this system where supposedly if you're not registered as a Democrat, and most people in California are registered as independents, but they vote in the Democratic primaries. So, people were told you don't have to register as a Democrat to vote for Sanders, except what people didn't know is that when you walk in to get a ballot, the Secretary of State, now our Senator, Mr. Padilla, ordered poll workers to not hand out Democratic, any ballot that would allow people to vote for Bernie Sanders unless they use the magic words. You could not ask for a Democratic Party ballot. They would tell you no, unless you guessed that you're supposed to ask for a crossover Democratic Party ballot.
Right.
It's like, remember when you're a kid saying, "Mother, may I?" This knocked out hundreds of thousands of voters, according to the number one voting expert in California from the California poll. He said basically it's purged by postcard, because the other thing that they do is people in California get their ballots mailed to them. That's a wonderful system. You just get your ballots mailed to you. That's Oregon, Washington, Colorado, California. In other words, American, but outside of America, they don't do that. But they send people ballots, but if they're not registered as Democrats, people open their ballots and say, wait, where's Bernie Sanders? Well, it's not on your ballot. You have to mail back your ballots and sign this affidavit that you really want a crossover Democratic Party ballot. I can't make this stuff up.
Yeah.
And so people they can't.
You had to say the specific crossover. If you didn't say crossover, you were screwed and your vote didn't count to Bernie. Man, that's the kind of election, integrity we should have in America. That's the kind of the best elections on the democracy in the world, where you have to say a certain phrase or you don't get the right ballot. That's some good shit right there.
They don't know how to get the ballot. It's a wonderful gimmick, but it means that the Democratic machine never loses. Because people, if you're part of the machine, you're registered as a Democrat. If you're an independent, you're not in the machine. And so they just make sure that independent vote never happens.
Right.
You look, several 100,000 votes were lost to Bernie. He won.
That's why this is the only reason I ever put myself down for Republican or Democrat, so I can vote in a primary, not the general. I don't vote for R or D in generals, but I do vote in the primaries. And you have to get on, or else they're not going to count it. Even if it's open state where you're allowed to, they won't count it if you're not an R or a D. They're going to assume that you're trying to screw the system or something. So, yeah. I never trust it. So, always get under a party if you want to vote in a primary.
In 16 and in 20, he could have won too. But he did win in 20, but he would have won bigger. But so the Democrats basically go after Democrats. Republicans go after Democrats. But mostly, they all go after people of color. In California, they were really aiming at the Hispanic vote that was voting for T.O. Bernie. So, that's the problem, is that both parties go after the most vulnerable voters of color, young voters.
So going back to Georgia, talk about what you found, and it's covered in the film with Brian Kemp and how he got elected in the first place. And
all right, so if you've been watching this whole thing, then his name just makes me cringe now, right? Like, this is my second time watching. Oh God, like, his name just makes me cringe. I'm starting to get a little back spasm from it. Like, oh. All right, let's keep going. Just his name, like, ugh, gross.
I love the details on his fake history.
Oh yes, well, okay, so a couple things. Number one of the things I found in the film, the reason it's called Vigilante, Georgia's vote suppression hitman, Vigilante. And by the way, again, you can see it for free at vigilantemovie.com until the runoff's over. Jamie Foxx subsidized that free showing, so it's vigilantemovie.com. But it's called Vigilante because one of the things in this new bill signed by Governor Kemp to make sure he stayed Governor Kemp because he just ran against and beat Stacey Abrams is that
just went really fast. He just said actor Jamie Foxx is paying for his movie to be on a website for free so that we can all go out and watch it. Vigilante.com. I'm watching that shit on Wednesday, so if you just want to stream and watch it you want to hang out, we'll watch it again because I'm down. That's awesome. Jamie Foxx, that's freaking awesome, dude. Paying for a website to be up so that he can post this movie to help, promote something that's actually like important information. I did not know Jamie was that sweet. That's awesome.
He created something where you can have vigilante vote hunters, as any voter in Georgia can challenge the right to vote of any other voter in Georgia, but not just any other voters. The new law says you can have an unlimited number of challenges. And Lee, when I say unlimited,
yeah, like I wanted to start doing documentaries on Wednesdays, and I think that's a fantastic one to do. Greg Palast starting it out.
I mean, unlimited. We had one woman you'll see in the film. You saw the film. You enjoyed the film, I understand. There's a woman in red, and you saw her at the beginning of the trailer screaming, "Get out of my house!" Called me what I can't say over the air. In fact, she kept going on. She was this woman dressed like Nancy Reagan, the high heels, the fancy red dress. She was swearing like a sailor. She was using words that would have gotten me an X rating, so I had to take it out. Her husband tried to jump on me, by the way. I don't think he thought I was cute. I think
he took out of the movie because she swore so much. I got to remember that. If a documentary comes at you, just swear your bloody hell a name off. Oh, that's fantastic. I got to remember that. Also sing a catchy tune. They won't be able to get the copyrights for it. That's also good note. If you want to sing a copyrighted tune, something super popular that they won't be able to ever buy the rights for, always a good way to get out of somebody recording you.
And they had guns. You'll see in the film. They had stacks of ammo all over the place. They had guns. And next to the door, an automatic, Russian automatic rifle.
So not a friendly
interview.
Threw
me out. So what happened was she had challenged 32,000 voters in Cobb County, in the suburb of Georgia, of Atlanta. This one woman, 32,000 voters she challenged. Now understand, there are 88 of these vigilantes, and I'm not being partisan by saying every single one is a Republican operative.
That number. Can I write that? That number. What the? How does one person say that? How is there not like some sort of limit on that? That's insane. That's not a number that you can put out there. That's not a legitimate number you can say.
Vigilantes. Altogether, they challenged 149,000 voters. 149,000 voters this year. These vigilantes. So they submit these lists. She said it was too expensive for her to even even print out the names of the people that she was attacking, that she was Jim Crowing. So she handed in a thumb drive. I show her the pictures of people whose votes she challenged, but she didn't know. I just said, "Do you know this woman?" No. Ever spoke to her? No. Been to her house? No. Know where she lives? No. Well, you challenged her right to vote. Oh. And then I kept showing her and telling her people, by the way, they didn't show the film. I even got one of the people that she knocked off the vote on the phone. Anyway,
okay, I have to watch this now. That is worth me watching an entire documentary, is having somebody on the phone saying, "You challenge this person's existence. Here they are on the phone. Here's a picture of them while you talk to them." Oh, I love Greg Palast. He's so fantastic.
Out of my house, and she was really.
And just so people understand what we're talking about, when she or anyone challenges someone else's right to vote, so she hands a thumb drive with 40,000 people on it, those people are then told they have no right to vote unless they show up at a courthouse and explain that they are themselves, which of course most voters are not going to have the time or the wherewithal to do all of that.
And I have to say that about half of it looks like about half of the people that they challenged were absentee voters. So for example, we had one of the stars of our film is Major Gamaliel Turner. He was challenged. because the Republican chairman in Columbus, Georgia, said he didn't live where he lived near Fort Benning. Well, all these soldiers, African American soldiers, were challenged because they were assigned to other military bases. This guy who is, by the way, career military, Major Turner. He's the he's the Pentagon's.
Okay, that's ballsy. How do you challenge a military vote? How do you challenge a military vote as a Republican or anybody really? But the fact he said it was 100% Republicans challenging votes, that's ridiculous itself, that there's like 100 people and they're 100% Republican and they're challenging votes. Second of all, how the fuck do you challenge an actual current military vote? How do you do that? That's so ballsy. Like, how? Okay, I don't.
Special advisor on warfare of the future, fancy title, huh? Anyway, so he was assigned to California. They wouldn't let him vote, and so the guy who challenged him, this vigilante vote challenger, he challenged 4,000 people around Fort Benning, basically black soldiers, including the major, and
one person challenged 4,000 soldiers. I want him to have to wear a flag that says, I challenge 4,000 voters, and they were all black vets. And then I think his drinks will not be spitting too often, you know. Just saying. What a dick. Wow. What an absolute dick.
This vigilante actually dresses up. You'll see in the film. He dresses up like a vigilante. He thinks he's Doc Holliday. Or I say this is kind of a shtick that he does. He likes to dress up and tell stories about Doc Holliday, who he says, oh, he killed 3-4 African boys in cold blood. When he says, boy,
I have to read that. Greg Palast has been my man crush for years. Lifelong lesbian, no less. That's fucking funny. I don't know if you guys ever read the paid comments that he puts up, but you know, Lee Camp is a comedian, and that shit is hilarious.
These were Union soldiers after the Civil War that he gunned down in cold blood. So this is his hero, and he dresses up. You'll see him with his 6-gun and his cowboy hat and his boots and his fly open, by the way, if you notice that. And he's talking about the Doc Holliday, the great vigilante, and then justifying the fact that he challenged 4,000 voters. And I said, do you know what house you're in? Because he was doing his little shtick in this very nice house in Columbus. And he said, no. I said, well, meet your host. And the major walks out. This African-American military officer walks out. I said, this is Major Gamaliel Turner. By the way, you said he doesn't live in this house, in his house, and you challenged his right to vote. And I said, do you want to apologize? Because that's all the major said. I just want the guy to apologize. No. But the thing is, that guy challenged 4,000 people he never met. She challenged
4,000 people that were in and around military base. She challenged how many again? 32,000. How does one person challenge 4,000, 32,000?
You need people. And also, don't forget, it's not a small thing that they all have guns. You'll see all throughout the film, Vigilante, that the open carry in Georgia, as Major Turner said, look, they can't wear white sheets anymore. That's considered pretty déclassé. So they dress up as Confederate soldiers. They dress up as Doc Holliday, but they always have an excuse to have a gun on them. And he was not happy that this guy came in with, by the way, that was a loaded 6-gun in that house. And that guy was, so he wasn't exactly Quick Draw McGraw there. He wasn't Wyatt Earp, Doc Holliday, because he's trying to
There's a great part of it where he goes to show you the gun and he tries to get it out of the holster and he can't.
But we were worried that the gun would go off or that he would be in a bad mood because when he realized he'd been had, that he has a loaded gun. So it was, but anyway, so there's a lot of humor in it, but it's really dark, so we just, what can I do? I don't want people to be crying through the whole film. You will laugh, I promise you. You will cry. And by the way, if you don't laugh and cry at this film, I'll pay for your therapy.
But this guy Brian Kemp is a current governor of Georgia. Is such a comic book villain. I mean, he claimed he would grow up poor in a log cabin, but you reveal that it was a gift from his millionaire father. You also reveal that he's the descendant of the first governor of Georgia to import slaves, and it's incredible that these type of human beings are still allowed any kind of power.
Well, the thing is, look, Brian Kemp didn't bring people in chains from Africa, but his ancestors did. He is, because who's this guy Kemp? He says, "Oh, I'm a self-made man." He shows this little, literally a little log cabin in the woods that he lived in, which is, like you say, it's his father-in-law, this multimillionaire superpower in the state, one of the top, real. The other thing is that his family, were the real backers and people who schemed up and created the system of school segregation in Georgia. But
this guy works me up, man. Freaking Kemp sucks. I hate DeSantis, but shit, this guy sucks. Actually, DeSantis is maybe worse. I don't know. They're really bad. They're really bad people.
First ancestors, he's related to the first governor, like you say, the first governor of Georgia to bring in enslaved Africans. Now, you have to understand, Georgia, most people didn't realize, in fact, until I did the film, I didn't realize that Georgia was one of the only places in America where slavery was illegal in Georgia. And by the way, Georgia it was all the South. It was Mississippi, Alabama, parts of Louisiana, parts of Florida. So Georgia was, for this Georgia territory, prohibited slavery because these were like German, Swiss landholders they knew that if you had plantations with enslaved workers working for nothing, that they would be reduced to enslavement and poverty. And that's exactly what happened. And as we continue even after the Civil War, you end up with the sharecropping system. That wasn't just black people. It was poor white people too. So this is where Brian Kemp's family made its money, from these Africans who they beat. And by the way, they were internationally notorious for the cruelty of how they treated the Africans. And there was, in fact, a big international bestseller written about Kemp's ancestors, about his great cruelty. It was a big international hit. Like, this is what Americans do. And now the thing is, he's not responsible directly, but
I mean, seriously, Greg could fucking talk for a 3-hour podcast, and I would listen to the whole thing. So please let me know if I'm going too long, because we are 33 minutes, so we got another 27 minutes of Greg talking, mostly talking with a little bit of Lee.
He's responsible for is covering up that history. I spoke with his cousin who said, "Look, this is where our money came from. Why are we hiding this? We have to accept that this is where our money and power comes from." His old colleague, Congressman John Barrow, said, "I know where my family's money came from. We held people captive, and we tortured them, and that's how our family made money. I know Brian's family, same thing. And why? And instead, he passed one of these so-called anti-CRT laws. He said he prohibits by law. I don't know whether they're going to start arresting teachers. By law, you can't tell any Georgia school child divisive historical concepts." Well, what is a divisive historical concept? And I didn't know that history sometimes has a lot of divisive concepts, but it's called history for, it's just the facts. But he says it's illegal. Basically, everyone knows what he's talking about. It's illegal to talk about enslavement in Georgia. And certainly, you're going to lose your job if you're a teacher if you start talking about Brian Kemp's, that the Kemp family brought Africans in chains to Georgia. And that's what that's all about. It's about historical amnesia and enforcing it by law.
Well, I have good news. 2 days ago, they created a federal political action committee for Brian Kemp. Very, very possibly planning a run for president. So.
Oh, you bet. I got to tell you. So the Wall Street Journal has already endorsed Kemp for president over Trump or DeSantis. They already have. They said, "This is our man" already. And so, when you say, and he's supposed to be the rational one, you should see his in our film Vigilante. We actually have some bits of his commercials where he does this goober thing. He says, "I got me this pickup truck so I can round up illegal aliens myself." Yeah, I just said that.
Yeah, I just said that. Oh man, I hope his voice is that is fantastic.
It's like, I can't make this up. And he talks in this new goober accent that he kind of made up. And then he has a shotgun. "No one's going to touch my gun." It's like, it's cartoonish. But
I know.
Unfortunately, he is the governor. And the only way that this cartoon survives is by stopping people of color from voting. And whether it's his armed vigilantes, literally removing the drop boxes in black counties and sending them to white counties. And that's just the beginning. And, like I say, 98 pages of junk. Even mailing in an absentee ballot, for the first time, you have to include some type of ID or ID numbers. One more impediment. Yet they found no one cast an illegal ballot. They made the Georgia Bureau of Investigation.
Oh yeah, that was and then when they actually go and try to find any illegal votes, they never find anything.
Every Dropbox mail-in ballot, everyone matched signatures. And by the way, you think, oh, This is a Georgia ballot, same as a California ballot. I'm holding it up because I want you to notice something. You can't just photocopy and steal ballots or stick them in drop boxes because every ballot has its own barcode, its own QR code. I'm sorry, your ballot is not secret. It's everyone has their own barcode, QR code, and they have to match your signature.
I know the right wing, as you show in your movie, they've created their own movie and stuff like that, saying, "Oh, here's video footage of a guy putting a bunch of ballots into a box at night or whatever." And you rightly point out that many people deliver their whole family's ballots at one time, so you could have 10 ballots, and it's completely legal to put all of your family's ballots into the box at the same time. But beyond just that, even if somebody tried to do this, printed out 10 fake ballots, there are ways of making sure these are real ballots like you're talking about. So
yeah, well, here's the thing. Okay, there was this film, and we have to one of the things that happened, I just told you about how they slashed black voting, mail-in balloting, by removing the drop boxes. Why they removed the drop boxes? Because of a film called 2000 Mules, which was released, you'll see in my film, I have hunks of it in my own film. It was released by Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago. It's been incredibly effective, saying that black men are paid $10. I can't make this up. Black men are paid $10 each by Soros and Zuckerberg which they give this money to Stacey Abrams. I can't make up the story. Stacey Abrams, who then gives black men $10 a piece to steal absentee ballots and fill them out, stuff them in a mailbox. Now, and here's what's interesting about that, Lee. One is Mark Zuckerberg's a Republican, so why is he giving money to steal votes for Democrats? But okay, forget all that. And every drop box has a security camera over it. So Stacey Abrams, who graduated from Yale Law School, is supposedly so dumb as to pay these guys $10 a ballot to stuff them in a ballot box, commit a felony crime under a security camera, when all she has to do is put a 59-cent stamp on the outside of the envelope and mail it and stick 700 in a mailbox at a time. So while you could say it's ridiculous, and by the way, one of the people that they said one man, you'll see him in our film, you see some young black male, what looks like a young black male, sticking a couple ballots in the drop box and getting in his car and leaving. They said, there he is, O.J. Simpson leaving the scene of a crime. And I asked in the film, Latasha Brown, did you see O.J. Simpson leaving the scene of a crime? She says, I saw a black man voting. By the way, we were able to, he doesn't want his name used. We were able to find the black man who was committing this supposed felony crime on a security camera. He is a major executive for a big tech company, and he is suing Donald Trump's cronies for calling him O.J. Simpson leaving the scene of a crime when he's an American casting his ballot. And that's all there is to it. So these guys, so they made this up.
He's a mega millionaire suing. Fantastic. Have a millionaire sue Trump. I love it. I mean, they're the only ones with any lawyers, right? You got to have actual lawyers to sue somebody rich. Average people can't actually sue because our system is not built to actually be fair checks and balances. It is meant for the rich.
Why am I going after this? Why do I care about this stupid film? Because they've all over the nation, they're removing ballot drop boxes to make it harder for people who work a couple jobs or take care of other people to vote.
Yeah,
that's the point.
And again, some people may have tuned in late. Even if you are an independent, which there are more independents in this country right now than there are Democrats or Republicans individually, even if you're an independent, you should care about this, because no third party is ever going to have a chance if all the people of color are purged from these voter rolls and people don't have legit elections. So if you're more into third parties or things like that you should still care. But
none of us should stand if we lose the right to vote in America, and it is slipping away. We all lose. None of us stand a chance. There's no sense. You can't talk about doing something about global warming, women's reproductive rights, any of that, unless you actually have the right to vote for those views which most Americans believe in. But they're not going. They don't trust you. They don't trust you, America, to vote. That's why they're taking it away.
Yeah, well, that's the great risk to them is true democracy. People actually having their voice heard is the great risk to the ruling class. But so I want to circle back to why you aren't, and you used to do more reporting for BBC and Rolling Stone and Guardian, and so why is this not being covered more?
Because now the Democrats have gone on a crusade against what they call election deniers. And the Republicans and the Democrats have basically swallowed their line, saying anyone, in fact, the rule of Facebook, YouTube has been, you cannot question the validity of a prior election. Well, wait a minute. As Stacey Abrams, who did question the validity of Brian Kemp's election as governor of Georgia, she said the difference between Donald Trump denying an election and my questioning the election outcome is that I've got the facts. He's got the fantasy. I've got the facts. but you can't discuss it anymore. It's impossible. And so, so you end up with stations like MSDNC who do not want to talk. They'll use that polite term vote suppression before an election, but it never apparently ever, despite all this vote suppression, never affects an election. I don't get how that happens. How do you have vote suppression? So Joe Biden said, he actually went down to Georgia and said, Georgia's new voting law is Jim Crow 2.0. Now, okay, did Jim Crow 2.0 affect this election? Oh, no. Don't vote for anyone who says, no. We don't allow, yes, there's all these laws that block people of color from voting, but it doesn't really matter. And that's why he said, don't forget, he said when he was asked when he first took office, are you going to push for the, what was it, House Bill 1, which would have provided more voting protection. He says, well, if I go for that, I won't be able, if I go for voting rights, I won't be able to pass my foreign policy or economic program. So he put it way down there. The problem is, Joe, if you lose the Senate, and by the way, 50-50 is a virtual loss because you'd have to call, because it's not like he has control of Manchin and Sinema. Then you ain't getting your domestic program. You ain't getting your foreign policy program. There is no question that if you didn't have these Jim Crow policies all over America, that those few congressional seats that put Mr. McCarthy in as speaker would not have happened. We have to face the fact that we still are dealing with the right of still asking the same question, more than half a century after crossing the bridge at Selma, more than a century and a half since the 15th Amendment in the Civil War. Can black people vote?
Someone in the comment section asked if you could comment on gerrymandering also being a huge problem.
Well, yeah, and they go together, because what happens is that if you suppress the vote,
you're going to move on. That's a fantastic clip, but I got more still, and can't go all night, right? So that was Lee Camp's new interview show. Doing it under Mint Press News. There's that link for you if you want to check the rest of it out. I could watch the whole fucking thing, but there's more to go.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Political Vigilante. I'm here with the host of Congressional Dish, Jen Briney. And Jen, I want to do...
So she tries to be very neutral, very fact-oriented. She knows so much facts, she doesn't actually know some of the names in politics sometimes. It's kind of fun, especially like historically accurate. But she is very good with the current and a lot of fact. So
I'm on the show now. I mean, there was a whole week after the election. We're waiting to see, who actually won. And I think might even still be a runoff now in Georgia. But something really interesting happened in this election that I really want to get your take on, which is there was going to be this red wave. It did not happen. A lot of the Trump-backed candidates did not win, but a lot of regular Republicans did.
That's the big news in Michigan, is that the Trump-backed Republicans didn't beat Democrats. Moderate Republicans did win. I don't know if that's every state, but it's a semi-common trend, I guess.
So it seemed interesting to me. I was talking to JB Updike, who's been on the show before, who runs open primaries, and he's, it's a very nonpartisan organization. And he made a great point. He goes, Graham, and independents they're saying independents are the reason why there wasn't a red wave, because what the independents did is they said, we're not voting for the conspiracy theory, QAnon, January 6th, whatever Republicans, but the regular Republicans that are just sort of like conservatives or whatever, they won. They crushed the Democrats in many areas. DeSantis in the state of Florida is a great example of how he wiped that state up. And there's several questions like, does Trump not have as much control over the Republican Party anymore? It's really setting it up for a big battle now between DeSantis and Trump and whoever else now wants to run at the Republican nomination. But and then an article came out in The Hill that said they polled voters, and 59% of the people polled said,
we haven't heard her voice yet, Graham. Jesus Christ.
It ends up being Trump versus Biden again, they're voting third party. They're voting independent, which tells me that the country is kind of fed up with this red-blue stuff. And I've just seen it as a comedian, just traveling around. I just finished, recording a special, and it's an hour, and I'm making fun of the whole, like I make fun of Biden, I make fun of Trump, I make fun of the whole, both parties. And I did it in, Madison, Wisconsin, very liberal town. They loved it. The next night I was in Waterford, Michigan, which is a MAGA, area of Michigan. They loved it. Nobody complained. No, like not.
Waterford is not MAGA per se. It's,
spectrum, nobody complained. So I guess in seeing all of this information, and you as somebody who follows this very closely, how do you see the results of these midterms? How do you see this playing out over the next 2 years leading up to the presidential election?
So here's the problem with me. I don't really pay that much attention to the campaigns and the horse race. And it's really weird for me to be doing this job and to feel so disconnected from that, because what I'm preparing for the next 2 years is the Republican policies that they put out in very, very detailed policy proposals. That's what I read. And so I'm kind of preparing myself for the job they intend to do. And it just seems like that is not your question, even though it should be. Like,
no, but
boom. I love that. Like, that should be your question, is what she's an expert on, not the thing that she does. I literally just said that she's not real good with, like, she's really good on, like, specific bills and policies. She's not real good on all the names and all the speculation and shit. She's a bills policy, very specific.
we should be judging them on that, and yet it does seem to be nonsense. Like, how close are they to Trump? Like, does Trump endorse them? Like, that's the conversation that we seem to have about these elections. Right. And so I don't really know if what I'm paying attention to is even going to be a factor in the next 2 years. Like, it's very frustrating, because I'm preparing for them to, do some investigations, which I think some of them might be quite useful. They're definitely going to be investigating Hunter Biden, and I think it really sucks for him because he's a drug addict and this is going to be terrible for him. But when it comes to the 2024 election, we're going to find some things out about the Biden family, especially in Ukraine, that I think could be very, very interesting. And if it's allowed to be on the internet, could affect the 2024 election. So I see the Republicans taking power.
If it's allowed to be on the internet, meaning if they're allowed to tell us, or if they even allow it to be leaked, or
an effect on the upcoming election. But like, why people vote the way they do, it's baffling to me, because it's so disconnected from the job they do in governing. It's crazy, because what I actually witnessed in the last 2 years, I've been doing my show now for 10 years, and this was the first 2-year Congress where I got to see what the Democrats do when they have full power. I've seen the Republicans, now I've seen the Democrats. I was actually quite pleased with some of the things the Democrats did. And so you would think that if we were paying attention to the governing, we would be rewarding good governance, and yet the House Republicans took over, and we have a real crazy crop that are going to be taking over our House of Representatives in the next 2 years. So it's just so disconnected from governing that I don't really know how to answer that question, because I'm just I'm not in that world.
No, but it very much relates, because, and I think you actually bring up very excellent points here, because I think this is the problem with American politics, is I would call it a deliberate disconnect. I think there's a narrative that the corporate media puts out. The Republicans are this, the Democrats are that, and the American public, I have empathy for them up to a point of like, well, we've all been propagandized, but then they seem to just not see the insanity of, and this is probably what is pushing their voting, rather than paying attention to the details of the laws and bills that have been passed, which is they just go, well, some of the people that just voted the Democrats out, and I'm not a fan of either party at all. I don't vote for either one of them, but they'll just do that. Like, well, gas is $6 a gallon, so that's Joe Biden and his gang. Get them out of there, without looking at like, well, have they passed bills that have made your lives better? And I feel like, I mean, I'm a big old lefty, so I feel like the Democrats have done not enough. If the Democrats would have just said, hey, here's, we're in the middle, when Joe Biden took over, he would have said, we're in the middle of a pandemic, everybody gets Medicare for all. And we're going to just wipe out student debt, because 85% of student debt is federally backed, so I can just do that with the swipe of a pen. And, instead of this bailout money going to Wall Street, no one's going to be behind on rent. Like in most other countries, no one's back on rent. They just paid their rent. So had they done those like big ticket item gestures, which would have impacted people's lives on a daily basis, people would have said, oh, there's no way I'm voting against the Democrats because look what they did. Biden came into power and they made everything better. But because they don't do the big things, and you can get into a second and explain to us some of the smaller things or the things you've been paying attention to that you think the Democrats have done that are better, we're sort of left with this, when Trump was in office, oh, we got to get him out of there. He's horrible. Biden's in office. Oh, we got to get him out of there. He's horrible. Like, it's just sort of what this football keeps getting kicked back and forth between these two awfully corrupt parties that really don't serve the American people. They basically serve their donors. And then again, the Democrats have a lame duck Congress right now. You would think they'd be.
I wanted to get to that point where he said that, and now I get frustrated that he keeps fucking going, man. You brought her on. Let her talk.
Every possible bill that they could possibly get done, and they're not.
Yeah. You'd think they would cancel their vacations and like take advantage of the limited time they have, and like they're not. Yeah, you're right. It's very frustrating to watch.
Yeah, they could have. I mean, the Medicare for all during the pandemic could have been like from what I know, it could have been a swipe of a pen. They could have done it with a swipe of a pen, called an emergency. It would have pissed them off. I mean, it would have very much pissed off the Senate, the opposite senators, but who cares? The whole
power that we give them, that's for sure. But I think that there's a hangover effect. Like, there's a lag in between actually making legislation and having it go into effect. And so what I've noticed is, like, you're going to see Republicans in the next 2 years for this upcoming election. They're going to see projects in their districts that are going to be breaking ground because of the infrastructure bill and the Inflation Reduction Act. There's a lot that was done without a single Republican vote that was done in the Inflation Reduction Act. So when you see electric car chargers being put in all over the country, like stuff like that, that was the Inflation Reduction Act. Republicans had nothing to do with it. But they're going to see this shovel-ready projects go into their district in the next 2 years, and they're going to take credit for it. And because the local media, largely because the well-funded corporate media owns local media, like, because they don't look at the details of these laws when that happens in real time, they don't get called out on it. So what happens is the Republicans, they take over Congress, and then they say, look at all this stuff that's happening right now. You can see it in your districts, and the people that actually did it don't get the credit. So that's also what's being set up to happen in the next 2 years. You also see, like, they call it like Bidenflation. It's like, we just had a global pandemic, which, by the way, was managed by the Trump administration for 2 years. Like, let's not say that this is all the Democrats' fault. But policy takes a minute to kick in. So I think we are being failed. And I don't really blame the American people for voting the way they do, because the journalists are not taking the time to be like, okay, this is the thing we're happy about. How did that come into law? And they're not saying exactly like who did it, when it happened. And so, yeah, when I look at
God, no, our journalists do not go over bills. Maybe that's something I should start. That's just I guess what she does in her show. Maybe we should start following her, because she goes over policy. She goes over what is actually going through. I try to do that once in a while. I start doing that one Monday night maybe. But you go in and see what bills are recently getting pushed through during, heavy big news cycles. So if all the cameras are on war, what are they pushing through on the lame ducks?
Before the actual governing, I actually think the Republicans are going to take credit for things that they didn't do. And that is going to be kind of annoying to watch. Because you're going to see projects breaking ground.
That's a great, that is a great.
Okay, that was what I wanted from that. Next is Jimmy Dore. Let's move on to the Jimmy Dore segment with RBN. There's still a good amount to go. So,
before my patient died.
They're talking about the railroad strike and general strike. And Jimmy Dore, he sidetracks. He dominates the conversation and sidetracks. So they had a few conversation pitfalls and whatnot. 25-37. I think I got this on the first one set up. I'm sorry, buddy. I know. Got the dog under my lap. He's currently on chemo, so he gets sick, and he's currently in his nauseous pooping stage, so he is not feeling great. Oh my goodness. Alright, so RBN, Revolutionary Blackout Network, Jimmy Dore.
Calling you out, but usually
25:37. Yeah, 15 seconds away from where I wanted to start. Good enough. Oh, yeah, you're underneath me. So we're going to watch a few minutes here, and then we're going to watch the last 10 minutes that Jimmy was on. Good segment, but I don't, you should go to RBN, check them out. It was a good show a couple days yesterday when they streamed it. And but we'll check out these first 6 minutes here, and then head to the last 10 minutes of the stream. And still more to go. I got, Roy Woods Jr. from The Daily Show with Trevor Noah. This is an old school clip. I just want to do a few minutes of that. And then there was an actual debate this week, the Holger Prize debate, which is as boring as fucking shit, but it's interesting. So I don't know. It's very smart. We could watch it like 1.5 maybe, because it is very, very dry, smart.
The NATO left that is doing that. But CJ, Jimmy, I'll pass to you guys. If you have anything you want to add to that?
No, absolutely. But I do want to lean into another part that Jimmy, that you alluded to, because this is something I have been curious about. So I was working on a segment where I was covering, because I was trying to find the genesis of when it went from good to bad for you with them. Like when, because I found footage of. Oh
yeah, that's what I wanted to start out with, because he's talking about the left, the split from Jordan Sheridan and Cenk Uygur from TYT, and he does this whole spiel, and absolutely you got to watch The Answer, because it's so if you don't know CJ on the bottom here, CJ is not as he has not been in the political realm for very long. He does not have a long history in this ballpark, so he he doesn't know the whole history, and Jimmy does not like to talk about it. So watch the whole sidestep.
You and Jake pleasantly having conversations. I found all of this footage. I found you and Jordan, and to see the dynamic now, like just recently Jordan tweeted about something about you said and tried to get people riled up. I just don't understand. Besides personality, or maybe it's only personality, do you think it has something to do with you going from, I'm willing to support progressive Democrats to now I'm not supporting any Democrat at all? Do you think it has anything involved with they're sheepdog, or they're shielding for the Democratic Party, and you are opposite? And because you're one of the more popular podcasters on the left who absolutely will not support the Democratic Party, you are a major target. Do you hear any truth in that part of it?
And what happened to the Bernie Sanders left? Well, Bernie Sanders folded them back into the Democratic Party, and they followed. That's what happened to the squad too. The squad doesn't have a leader, so they look to Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is going to suck Joe Biden's cock until the grave, and so they go right along with them. And so the reason why I didn't change, as those videos that we were talking about earlier, that Joe put together, shows that I've stayed consistent, and my critics have all changed. They were on board with me. We're done with this incrementalism. We're done with the two-party duopoly. They're both pro-war, anti-worker parties. And in 2016, Chuck Schumer, there's a famous video I play on my show all the time of him saying it doesn't matter if we lose blue-collar workers in Pennsylvania, because for every blue-collar worker we lose, we're going to get a white-collar worker in the suburbs in Michigan and Wisconsin and Ohio. And of course, that didn't happen, and they lost the presidency to a game show host. And so there is no this idea that there's somebody represents the working class. That's why people were desperate enough to vote for a clown like Donald Trump in the first place, because they've already voted for Joe Biden for 45 years, and he locked up half the fucking country, and he made it illegal for you to get relief in bankruptcy for the other half of the country from their medical debt or their student loan debt. So they know what the fuck they've got. They voted for Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, and their lives got worse. Whose lives? Black and brown people's lives got worse. And Trump only managed to deport half as many Hispanics as Barack Obama did in his first term. So this idea that voting for Democrats is a vote for the minorities is bullshit. They use that identity politics to shame you into voting for them, but the shame is all on them. They just revealed that they are fascists, and that's not hyperbole. That's the fucking definition of fascism. The government intervening for a fucking corporation to screw the citizen. That's exactly what Mussolini said fascism is, and that's what the Democratic Party is. So then don't ever let them call somebody else. That's a big buzzword now. We have to your first order of business is to fight fascists. Well, then you should be fighting the Democratic Party, because they're the
He does go on some fantastic rants. He goes on some fantastic rants.
party that's in control right now.
Yeah, I had a debate with Destiny. he was debating an absurd premise where he was debating me whether the United States is a fascist country or not. And of course he believed that Russia is a fascist country. And I broke it down as the last mistake ever made on how the United States is fascist, right? So I don't call ordinary people fascist, right? I think it's kind of a waste of time. But when you look at our ruling class, the policies that they implement, and now with the most recent pivot, I'm gonna ask you about this. One key tenet of fascism is the collusion in corporation and government. It's a harsh regimentation of society that imposes the law that punishes people who are enemies of the state. That is literally what they're doing to Julian Assange. That is what they've been caught doing to protesters. When you look at the George Floyd protesters, a lot of people were spied on, and Facebook gave the police information of people who were protesting them. So let me sum that up. Big Tech gave names, information to the government, to the people who were protesting said government. And people don't think we're fascists, and then they vote for said fascist party, and then they want to pretend they have the moral high ground here, that they are anti-fascist. Now, with that said, I want to dive into the story because it's something I've mentioned quite some time. I want to ask you about the massive leaks on Twitter, which pretty much sums up what we already know, what we knew in terms of social media colluding with the Democratic Party to censor people that don't like, censor stories that don't like. And I cannot emphasize enough. I'll pass it to you, Jimmy. I want to get your thoughts on this. This is such an egregious act. This is such an egregious act. You had the White House press secretary under Donald Trump who had her Twitter pulled down because of the Hunter Biden story. And now it was revealed that Twitter was taking hints from the Biden administration. I'm going to dive into some receipts, but Jimmy, do you have any initial takes before I dive in and show you guys exactly what I'm talking about?
Well, my initial take is this. So people have been texting me and saying, boy, this really is bad for the Democrats. This really looks bad for the Democrats, that they were censoring their political opponents on social media. This really looks bad if they were censoring. And I'm like, but what do you mean looks bad? I mean, what price are they? They're not going to have to. You saw what Sam Harris said. They're proud of it. They brag that they committed a conspiracy to censor their political enemies because they feel like they're fighting Hitler. And if you're fighting Hitler, everything's okay. So this is, they're not, they look this at, they word this as a bad.
Yep. That's what I want to
see people who work for Jeff Bezos.
Oop.
I pay more when you can get your favorite shows.
All right, we're gonna watch the last 10 minutes of his segment. Last 5-6 minutes is fire shit. So, and all right, there we go.
So that's my last on this story. CJ, I will pass to you unless you have any last thoughts on that, Jimmy.
No, it's funny to see people who work for Jeff Bezos trying to point the finger at someone else for working for. It's crazy.
It's hilarious. Okay, so Jimmy, I do want to get, or we want to get you to chime in. You kind of already brought up the rail workers and how NATO left sold them out. But I really yesterday in the stream, I really, when reading through their statement, I really heard Jimmy. I felt like somebody who was a Marxist wrote this. And let me just bring up two passages in it, and I'm sure you may.
They're blurring the line between what is government and what is civilian, like SpaceX. Big tech is so in bed with the government. They are like one and the same. Well, you know, that was the thing that Elon Musk learned, is that if you want to be mega rich, you got to take that government money because they got the unlimited checks with the dollar right now, you know. Even though they really don't have it, and it's just destroying the government and la-da-da. But you want tax, you want, like, that's how the military-industrial complex makes so much money, because that's, you sell something to the government. And now that Google is in bed with the, you know, Google and Amazon are in bed with the CIA and whatnot, that's how you make your money. Government contracts.
You have seen it already yourself. And just to get what you think, because we've been saying we need to come together, forget all the culture war stuff. We need to come together and overturn or overthrow, I should say, the ruling class and put the ownership of all these industries into the workers' hands. So let me read this first segment. It says, Railroad Workers United understands that this fight for justice will continue in the coming months and years. And this is the quote, "The rail carriers are too powerful and are a Scrooge to the national economy," end quote, according to RWU Steering Committee member Paul Lindsay. And here's another quote, and this is the quote I really wanted to zero in on. They need to be taken into public ownership and run in the interest of workers, shippers, passengers, and the nation, not a handful of wealthy stockholders, end quote.
the rail is a public interest, so therefore a national good. They're under federal contract, but they don't get federal benefits. They're the only federal contractors who don't get federal benefits, and they're the most critical. This is such a fuck situation.
Well, and I just wanted to get what you thought of them. This is and this is why to me this is important. This industry is the industry that Congress felt they needed to make legislation for them to curb their striking. And that industry is saying, we need to put this industry into public ownership. That's amazing to me for that to be out there in the open. That's essentially, to me, that can only be accomplished through a general strike. And I have another quote for that. But if you want to chime in here, Jimmy, what are your thoughts on them saying this being put into public ownership?
Well, I think that's quite a statement, don't you? I mean, so now they've seen through the looking glass, right? They understand the system, especially when it just moved against them so swiftly, right? Again, they still can't get clean water to Flint, Michigan, but somehow they moved immediately to take the power of a strike away from railroad workers. And yeah, it does sound like whoever wrote that definitely understands the game that's being played and isn't going to stand up for it anymore. So again, they were going to win. They were going to win this strike. That's why Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and the Democrats had to swoop in and screw the workers because they actually had power. And so how you can continue to vote for a Democratic Party knowing this, it's you don't have a conscience. You're the bad person. You're the fascist. If you keep doing this knowing.
And straight up, they're talking still about doing a strike. Like, just because the federal government fucked them over, they're still going to try to figure out a way to do it. That's what their plan is right now. The interviews I have seen with these workers, they're still going to try to, like, they're like, the only way we can get it is strike. So just because they said that we can't doesn't mean that we won't. So stock up on your shit. Stock up on your shit, yo. Have a month's supply of food ready. If you have to live on beans and rice, that's what we're about to do. Luckily, I can salsa from the garden this year.
And people are doing this. And so that's what I think. I still think the railroad workers should strike. I wish.
Oh, and I also, yes, I think that they should get what they need, which is to be, able to live their lives without constant bombardment from their jobs. Like, you need to be able to have a personal life. Everybody deserves a personal life.
They could, and if they did, it would shut down the whole fucking country, and they would win. So the problem is their union leadership willing to do that? I don't think so. So, but if they did, I think they should still strike. And if I was a railroad worker, I would strike if I was them, because they would win.
What do you think, Jimmy, if we reached out to rail workers and had like because I really want to push this. Like
I also have probably three, like a whole level of ramen as well. Yeah, ramen, rice, beans. Oh, you done? Lots of pasta and stewed tomatoes, marinara. I got garden goods galore. I'm ready. Shut this shit down.
Like, if there's somebody I can contact and say, hey, if you have support, like I want to brainstorm with maybe you, Jimmy, and some other people to see if we can have a hand.
Sure,
and this is what we've been calling for. This is what's needed to get the changes we want. So,
and yeah, I mean, in my opinion, like just the way I'll roll, if throw some Tony on the ramen, it's good to go. I'm not the ramen person. I'd rather I can eat rice, beans, and I got salsa verde, spicy salsa, pineapple salsa, and some nice sweeter salsas. I'll have rice, beans, and a scoop of salsa all day. A little fresh avocado. Yeah, there's not gonna be any fresh avocado. There's not gonna be lettuce, but I can eat that all day. I'm good. We all got our cheap food that we can survive on, right? Just stock up and make sure of it, because they screw the railroad workers over. That's all of it. It's just gonna kick it down the it's just gonna kick this strike down the road. They're still gonna try to figure it out. They still want what they want. Like, they voted against Biden. They're just pissed now. That's all it is. Like, just because Biden went against their wishes doesn't mean that they're still not trying to strike. Most of the most influential strikes in the planet or the most influential strikes in American history have been illegal strikes. When the government sanctions it, okay, doesn't mean it's going to be influential, really.
I'm sure you, Jimmy, would love to like just be a part of this. Is history making to me, and then just based off of this release. I'll pass it to you, Nick. Go ahead. You're muted, Nick.
My bad. So one thing I want to add is when you look at the release, they were sure to call out Democrats and Republicans. They said both parties screwed them over. Now, these are the things that got called us a Dorite. That people say. So these are
Dore adjacent. Mike from the Humanist Report called us the Dore adjacent crew.
Oh, the Humanist Report guy, yeah. They called us Dore adjacent because we said, we shouldn't vote Republican or Democrat, and the Bernie Sanders and the squad sold us out. And these are workers that are striking that essentially saying the same thing. They would say that it's only the online left. You're a part of the online left if you're not a Democrat. Meanwhile, these are workers. We had workers on our General Strike Summit outside anti-two-party duopoly. The only people that seem to be apologizing for the Democratic Party are it's funny enough, the real irony are these shut-ins who are only online and only on Twitter who are obsessed with defending politicians. Meanwhile, real workers, black people that are affected by these policies, they are not out here doing a grim job where they talk shit about behind people behind a block because they're criticizing Democrats, right? So these are workers calling out the two-party duopoly, and that's why I cannot emphasize enough, because there's been messages of RBN and Jimmy in the Jimmy Dore Show, and the progressives who call us so pro-worker call us right-wing for saying that. So, Jimmy, anything you want to add? I know we probably got to get Jimmy out here soon. Go ahead.
Shama Sawant tweeted out. So she's a real progressive. She's not one of these fake fucking squad members, right? So she's the real deal. And she's the one who told me 7 years ago on my show that the road for progressives inside the Democratic Party leads to a graveyard. And at first I thought she was crazy. And then, of course, it didn't take long for me to see that she was 100% correct. And she's the one who had the vision, just like the person who wrote that statement from the railroad strikers. And she has a tweet out, and it says, all but one of the squad crossed the picket line, voting with Democrats and Republican majority to break rail workers' strikes. A socialist can't be a strike breaker. This should result in expulsion from the DSA. Failing that, the squad's betrayal of workers becomes DSA's betrayal. No, the DSA is not. The DSA have betrayed you. That's what people don't realize. Not the members of the DSA, but the leadership of the DSA. They're infiltrated. They're not. They're just like the squad. They're probably for this fucking strike breaking. Where are the DSA?
How can you be a democratic socialist if you're fucking for strike breaking? Fucking man, the squad is such a failure.
I don't even know who the head of the DSA is. Why the fuck is that? Because they're not there to make a change. They're there to make sure that all the revolutionary energy that you have and that I have gets funneled back into that pro-war anti-worker party. That's what the fucking leadership of the DSA is there to do. And they're not going to... Do you think they're going to kick AOC out of the DSA? Do you think they're going to make her pay a price for this? No, they're going to call me a white supremacist for pointing this out.
One thought on DSA, and then I'll give your final thoughts on this. Final thoughts before you get out here, Jimmy. DSA Madison, probably one of the only good DSA organizations out there. They voted to kick out Jamal Bowman from the group because he's a Zionist, and then they took heat from other DSA organizations because they was upholding their own rules where we stood in solidarity with Palestinians. And they said, "Oh my God, no, Jamal Bowman, don't worry, they're a rogue DSA." Reel it back in. So now DSA is gonna have a bunch of scabs. I think you want to chime in, Jimmy. I'll mute you here.
A bunch of scabs.
But anyway, I'll get Jimmy. I know Jimmy probably had to run soon. CJ, any last thoughts? I'm gonna get Jimmy here as well.
No, I want Jimmy to give him an opportunity to just thank him for joining us. And I really think, Jimmy, you can affect you. This is why I believe you're a target. You're one of the few who can have both conservatives, right wings, Marxists to libertarians all sitting in a room listening to you. That hasn't been done since Bernie. You have taken over the Bernie coalition in my eyes. You've taken over the Bernie pseudo, except for the people at the top of the managerial class, like the people that hate you now, that were your friends. But you've taken over sort of that.
Yeah, Russell Brand even bigger though, but Jimmy is kicking ass right now.
Pseudo coalition. This is why, to me, you're a target, and why there's going to be a consistent. But because of that, Jimmy, I think you have a unique ability that if this rail union is serious, like you would have a unique ability to affect and help. I'm not saying like you're, everything, but you would absolutely be able to bring people from different groups together and say, hey, listen, we disagree on these culture war things, but this rail union is serious. This is it. This is the thing we've been talking about that needs to happen. So that's what I wanted to say in parting, but I'll give you the last word in the parting word.
CJ is so fucking over the top sometimes.
Well, you know, I haven't spoken with Christian Smalls recently, so I will reach out to him and see what his ideas are on this. And I definitely would do anything I could to help amplify the workers, the railroad workers, and I would help them organize and strike and do whatever they could because they have the power right now. And they have, that's why this happened, because they actually have leverage. And the establishment class, the oligarchy could not let this example be made. It already happened with Starbucks. It already happened with Amazon and Christian Smalls. They couldn't have this because they would win, and they would win like in 2 days. The strike would be over fucking like that. And that's why they can't have this happen. So I'm willing to do and work with anybody, left, right, libertarian, progressive, communist, socialist. I'm willing to work with anybody to help the railroad workers get sick pay and fight against the oligarchy and set an example for the rest of the workers in the country that they actually have power. That's what this is really about. They don't want them to set the example for the rest of the workers that you actually have power. This is what we've been talking about. Workers are waking up from across the country. Amazon, Starbucks, now railroad, where people are waking up and they actually have the power. And this is how you do things, by shutting shit down. And that's what scares them. Just like the truckers, they were effective. That's what scared them. And that's why they had to turn into fascists and authoritarians and lock down their bank accounts. They'll do that to us too, but we got to be ready for it.
Oh.
Go ahead, Anthony. We appreciate you for coming on once again. I don't know if you have any plans, CJ, but I think I'm.
Boom. Drop that fucking mic, yo. All right, that was through the introductions. All right, so that was our talking with Jimmy. Kind of an interview, not exactly an interview per se, more of a just Jimmy joining the show, but the round table was worth a pop in. And here's another round table discussion about the adult film industry. And just a quick check-in with this. A few minutes of lighterness after that intense little screams. This is Roy Woods Jr.'s fucking, I don't know, podcast, I guess, that they're doing now with Roy Wood Jr. is doing a podcast through the show, but it's, you know, they film it too, and I don't know. It was funny for a few minutes. I thought it'd be funny for a few minutes to kind of break up the segments, because the next segment is going to be intense.
It's completely off the wall. And if I recall, you were relatively new to the show. So what did you think when they brought this piece to you?
No, I was super new. And so it was going to be my third piece. So I think there were 5 pieces floating around. And obviously I got drawn to porn because everybody loves porn. Even people who say they don't watch porn love porn. But then I saw the story and I was like, oh, this is a little bit darker, because Trayvon sent me an article that was like, white women were demanding more pay to sleep with black men. And as disgusting as that was, it was shocking to me because, I don't know, maybe I'm naive, but when I think of the porn industry, I always think of like sexual free, open-mindedness. I never thought that it would be something that had so many boundaries or whatever. And then when I was researching more on it, I saw that not only is it racist, they're like capitalizing on it with the titles and the premises. And it seemed like a narrative that they were kind of getting away with. And also, I never worked with Roy. And so it was my first piece with Roy. So I was very excited about that.
Yeah, but what did you find most surprising? Because I'll be honest, like when I was doing a little bit of the research going into, you know, for the listeners, as a correspondent, it's very important that you get the backstory on the topic that you're researching, because it makes you a more adept interviewer when you're speaking with your scene partners, if you will, for this particular, we'll call them scene partners. But the people you're interviewing, you want to know what the hell you're talking about, right? And so I just remember seeing all of these random racist porn titles. We had a researcher, Devin Leary, who was with the show at the time. And she had to watch hours of porn and find the stereotypes so that we could find the jokes in them. And so, like,
her desk was so popular.
Like 12 years a slave, like just parodies of just popular films. They were just like, yeah, let's flip that into a porn. So was there anything that shocked you about this shoot?
I was going to mention Devin Leary because she did all the research and she was the segment producer at the time. She's amazing. And I said, you know, we need to find a bunch of porn that really banks on all those stereotypes of Black people being criminals, breaking in, thugs, you know, whatever. And I was thinking she might have to dig deep, like maybe, and it was like instant. She's like, oh my God, I found one. And the titles aren't even subtle. They're just like, oh no, a Black man broke into my house. Oh no, there's a Black man inside my wife. Like they were just, it was an embarrassment of riches. And it was just like so much. She almost gave me 2.
Doing research on porn in the middle of the Daily Show newsroom with a bunch of people stopping by and like, she said that was the most popular desk for a while. I can only imagine. I can only imagine.
Much stuff, and then that was like insanely surprising to me. And then the second thing that was really surprising was hearing things white women were more willing to do over having sex with a black man, like triple anal penetration and prostitution, and everything was shocking. Because like I was saying earlier, I really thought it was just open-minded industry, which maybe I am naive in that.
White women will demand more money just to take that black bone.
White girls will ask for double, triple, quadruple the amount to do an interracial scene.
This seems to be the only industry where a white person can just straight up go, I ain't working with no black people today. You couldn't do that if you worked at a fast food spot. You couldn't just go, who's cooking? Stanley. Oh, baby, you got to pay me time and a half if I'm going to be working with these Negroes. Jasmine, give me the first time you were on set and you know, like when you were in the middle of racism, like when racism is in progress, and you just be sitting there talking to yourself. King know what I'm talking about too. You just be like, am I experiencing racism? This feel okay, Jasmine, just hold the chicken and biscuit in your hand and bend over. Okay, and action. He's like, wait a minute, did he just ask me to hold a chicken wing and a biscuit? Like, walk us through, you know, both of you, walk us through that first time that you discovered the level of discrimination that existed in the industry, or were you put up on game about that from the jump?
So I think we're both going to be able to give you a range of examples. And so for me, I was put up on, like, the reason why Royal Fetish Films exists is because as a consumer of porn, I was like, first of all, I can't watch it and listen to, you know, I can't listen to the fake black scent. I can't listen to the stereotypical tropes. I can't listen to the chicken and biscuit jokes. Like, it became a form of entertainment for me that was like, if I'm enjoying this, there's something wrong with me. And I'm not enjoying it, so why am I watching it? Now, where am I going to go to get inspiration to masturbate, right? So when King and I started working together, it was like, we need to create something that we could feel proud to watch. And we were hearing this from, we're already doing sex education, hosting parties, and we were already hearing this, like, I don't watch porn specifically from black women because we don't see ourselves reflected. It's degrading. It's hard to feel sexy when you are seeing the lowest representation of yourself and your people. So I already knew, like, whatever we created was going to be something that I wanted to watch. Now,
yeah, the two on the bottom are both porn stars. The two on the bottom are the porn stars they brought in. It's not the same porn stars. So this is a segment they did like 6 years ago. And so the original porn stars they used back then are different, but these are for the podcast they wanted some, you know, a good conversation, not just a couple sound bites. So these are two porn stars that started a by and for black website domain. I don't know exactly how they.
That means as we started to become more popular, at least for me, people were starting to ask me to shoot for their company. And so I come from, in this industry, from a privileged space where I can say, like, no, thank you. That sounds like I'm going to be sitting there in exactly how you described, like, I'm in the middle of some racism. And so I was able to say, kind of know right off the bat. They're like, oh, well, the scene is going to call for you to do some twerking.
The woman, the woman on top is a producer for The Daily Show. She's a segment producer for Roy Woods Jr.
Nothing's wrong with twerking, but you've never seen me twerk. Why would you be casting me for that? Like, I'm probably not the best person. Like, if you want to see great pointed toes and some modern dance, like, sign me up. But for twerking, you know, you're just kind of making an assumption that because I'm black and I do porn, that's what you're going to get, right? So, but I will say that what I have seen, and I've worked enough corporate jobs and for government agencies to know that sort of like baseline of racism that's there. I look at where the bottom line, where the dollars roll, and I found that my white counterparts were getting money for hair, for makeup, and for costuming when they shoot. And for me, it was like, make sure you bring your own makeup kit, and you know, we'll do something with your hair. You know, you have that style that's so edgy, and bring a couple of
some sitcoms. I can relate to this.
Okay, bring a couple of outfits, and we'll choose from what you have. And then later to find out that this is a line item where my white counterparts shoot. You know, so there are, there's that. There's also, I have found, like, even leading into this interview, I was like, let me Google myself. Let me Google myself and the N-word. And because I know I don't say it. So somebody had to put it out there. And a lot of my scenes have been licensed using words that I did not agree to. Now, since a lot of those scenes are older ones, since we got even further up on game, we now make it a part of our contract that they cannot sell our scenes using any type of derogatory language. Because a lot of times you might be thinking that you're shooting for a company that has your best interest in mind and that sees you as whoever you are. And then, you know, 3 times around, you're in Germany as black nigger girl twerks on big black dick husband, or not, definitely wouldn't say husband, criminal, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, or ghetto women give blowjobs to pay their power bill. Like it's always like why they need the money in the description. So I've
Right.
heard. I've never been to any of these sites.
Those titles are so long.
I think also with a lot of the times when it comes to just that open-mindedness of the industry that Stacey had just mentioned, it might be open-minded for the white performers. Like there's a certain level of freedom that they have even within their titles, but within the black titles, there's this whole desperation that is also put with it as well. And for me, I have experienced all the way from the subtle racism to I've been called nigger on set before. You know, I was at a shoot
Like in the scene?
No, it wasn't even in the scene. I was
Just a random crew member.
No, it was another performer. She wanted to have sex with me off camera after our scene, and I was like, nah, I got things to do. I was actually about to call Jasmine and check in on the family, and she catches an attitude and messages. We had the same agent, and she messaged the agent, King is being an uppity nigger to my agent. He won't have sex with me off camera. And you know what uppity mean? When they call you uppity, that just means you're not doing what white folks want you to do.
Yeah, they're trying to break you.
Exactly. The company tried to tell me that I should still film with her. I basically had to tell them nothing that I shot with her should ever be released. I had them sign, like I wrote some shit on a paper right there and was like, y'all signing this, y'all never releasing this, or there's gonna be a problem. So then they tried to tell other people in the industry not to work with me because I'm a problem, because I don't want to be called a nigger by my co-star.
But if she's a white woman, she holds more power than you in the industry because white women are kind of the golden geese, fiscally speaking, for a lot of these production companies, right?
So I want to challenge that, Roy. The perception, right, is that white women are the geese. And I think that that's where it's the reflection of society in the industry. But when you look at what the top selling genre is, it's interracial. You cannot have, a white woman alone is not making the top dollar. When you look at the top searches, it's interracial, hentai, MILF, right? So there are certain subsets of the people that are participating in the industry that actually are the clickbait. They are, so this idea that, white women have specific power in the industry, it's more of a reflection of our larger society and how we see them as, without fault, to be protected, to be uplifted, to be, held in this prized position. But if we look at the bottom line, they need to sleep with someone other than themselves to bring in the highest number of clicks, advertisements, and money.
What is the dynamic on set though? Like if you writing cease and desist on the back of a napkin on set, what is the HR situation in that? Like, okay, like let me break it down, because all I know is like acting on a set. And there was some time years ago, I played a slave in the background of a Civil War reenactment. This is like 97. This is my first ever television credit. And we're all dressed like slaves, and it's, they're showing Union soldiers walk by, and the director comes over and goes, could you guys mime like you're clapping? Like he wanted us basically to be doing like some humming and singing around the fire, type like singing slave hymnals. And we all kind of looked at each other and was like, yo, no, I just kind of want to, I'm already dressed like a slave, my man. Just let me just sit here and just chill. How much do you get to challenge when they try to add a little, they try to, like, you agree to one thing and then you get on set and they try and flip the script, King? Like, has there ever been a scenario where they try to come in and sprinkle a little race? Hey, you mind, King, I love what you're doing, but let me put a little racism on top of it real quick. Okay, and action. Let's do it again.
I mean, those are the times when you have to make a business decision where it's like, am I comfortable with this? Am I walking off set? Am I going to deal with whatever backlash is going to follow?
Have you walked off set?
I have walked off set. I have definitely walked off set. I have had, that's why I said I've dealt with so many. Sometimes it be that type of racism where it's like, I have a lot of black friends. I grew up with black friends. Like just recently I had this thing where this is the director. This isn't like another performer, this is the director. The first time I ever went into somebody's house and it smelled like chitlins, I'm like, what does that have to do with anything that we're doing right now? You know what I'm saying? It's like,
we haven't smelled chitlins in the house in like
I don't eat pork. You know what I'm saying? So, but it's like stuff like that, and it did wind up having to. It led to a conversation that I was like, I might never work for this company again, but I need to have this conversation in a way that's not gonna completely make them be like, angry black man, but they gotta stop. And it had kind of led to this thing where I can't go. He was talking about Atlanta, like some neighborhood. He was like, white people can't go there, and I was like, where in America can't white people go? Y'all own stuff. You gotta go to the hood to collect your rent, or there's a Burger King there, or there's whatever. You know what I'm saying? There's no place in America that you can't go. But I know if I'm Ahmaud Arbery and I'm running through a neighborhood, I know I can't be there. I can't go to Bensonhurst. I can't go to sundown towns. Correct. That's our reality. That's not your reality. But it's shaped that way. So I had to have this conversation on set with the director And I knew like, and at this point it's just like I'm not in the mood to fuck after this. I know, like I'm like, look, it's not.
Oh yeah.
happen.
Also, there's
it's not
still a
gonna happen
scene to
today.
shoot.
Exactly, it's not gonna happen today. And trying to explain that, like, you sometimes will have to. It's not gonna happen for me, and you don't always have to. Sometimes you're gonna have to put it like, I can't work with you, but sometimes you just gotta take that L. And
He said I'm not in the mood to fuck today. Whew. I don't know what that's like. No clue what that's like. That was pretty funny. That was pretty funny. Alright. Last serious debate of the last serious segment of the night, which is a debate instead of an interview. The one debate, the Holberg Prize.
Please take.
All right. So we have John Mearshmer and Carl Bildt. They're going to talk about Russia, Ukraine, China, and the West, all from a nice UK-US perspective.
Does it matter?
You are in the middle. I'm in the center.
In the middle, yes.
The middle.
Please. Now, thank you very much to both of you for very disturbing, I must say, presentations. Now, the subject of today's debate is how the geopolitical crisis influenced the power of deterrence and prospects for a new global security order. But let us start in Europe, and then we will zoom out afterwards. And before we venture into this uncertainty of the future and even of the present, let us go to one issue where I know that your analysis and your statement, which you have repeated here, is seen as very provocative in Europe, namely the why of the Russian invasion and the Russian aggressive stance towards Ukraine. And I would...
Yeah, this is the segment I wanted to watch. The Russia... What is this here? About 14, 15 minutes of these two going back and forth for a minute. They're very smart. I don't know. It was so dry. It was really hard to stomach the first time. It seems like it's good. I don't know. I'm going to go fast because they're old fucks.
Invite Carl to have some initial reactions to what John has said.
And I can do that, but let me start by saying that at least there's one issue where we do agree. We live in a more dangerous time. Power relationships are shifting. Different competing interests are there. It is less predictable. It is more dangerous. On that, we do agree. And there was an element of agreement also on the China analysis. We could go into that further. But on, obviously, the Ukraine-Russia, we do disagree. I mean, to me, it's abundantly clear. If you read what Mr. Putin said, he was very explicit in his speeches, that setting up Ukraine was not only a mistake, it was worse than a mistake. It was unacceptable. Its old Russian lands should never have been allowed by Lenin to set up the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic. And then he said, it didn't make much of a difference, he said, because, I mean, Stalin ruled it with an iron hand anyhow, but Stalin did the mistake of not taking away the formal structures of Ukraine. And the second mistake was allowing it independence. This is, as he said repeatedly, ancient Russian lands. There's no question he wants to get rid of Ukraine. I don't think he wants to create the Soviet Union. His ideal is sort of Ivan the Terrible, it is Peter the Great, it is Catherine II, that's his Russia. And he wants to recreate that. It's not only Ukraine, it is undoubtedly Belarus.
What's up, Charles? What's up, what's up? Welcome in. This is our last segment of the night, the debate. I'm going to finish with some comedy, but it's not, I don't know, it's so dry. It's...
For us as well. So his intention is abundantly clear in the speeches that he gave immediately before and immediately after the invasion. Then John said that, well, he didn't have the resources to do it. That's fairly obvious by now, agree. But we should be aware of the fact that when he attacked on February 24th, he attacked with 90% of the combat potential of the Russian army, 90%. So he would clearly, and he attacked from the north in order to get Kiev, biggest city, from the west to get Kharkiv, second biggest city, from the south to get Odessa, the third biggest city. He attacked with missiles every single major center across the territory of Ukraine. It was not some sort of Sunday expedition by some Russian forces who had got lost in the woods. It was an all-out invasion.
I don't know if that was an all-out invasion. That's kind of rough to say. I wouldn't call that an all-out invasion by Russia. Russia has a lot more power than what they did there, but okay.
Failed due to the fact that the Russian army was less competent than he thought, and as a matter of fact, substantially less competent than most of us thought. Because even the Western intelligence agencies who said he's likely to invade thought that he was going to finish the job in a week. He believed that as well. We know a fair amount of his political preparations. He believed he could do it in 1 or 2 weeks. The Ukrainians proved otherwise. But then on the background, John, I can understand that. You're nothing wrong with Chicago, but that's where you're coming from. So your perspective tends to be the Americans all over the place and Europeans and others not really to that extent. It wasn't really, and I wrote a book about it, I was there. It wasn't really the Americans pushing. I mean, we Europeans went to Washington and say, you have to care about Europe as well, not only be obsessed by China. If there were anyone's pushing, Poles pushed in order to become members of NATO. The Ukrainians were knocking on our door all the time. We want closer relationship with the European Union. We want to be part of the West. It wasn't the West going east. It was the East wanted to go west in order to get more of the security, the prosperity that they rightly or wrongly associate with the European Union and indeed NATO. And Americans were fairly reluctant in the beginning. If you take the entire crisis that led up to the first invasions, first the Crimea one and then the Novorossiya ones in 2014, the Americans were fairly absent from the scene. They were fairly absent from the scene because they were engaged in other things. It was the Ukrainians pushing, and rightly so, in my opinion. Then
in his opinion. There we go.
Finally, just the Russians consider it an existential threat with Ukraine. Why on earth would they consider it an existential threat? I mean, that's pure fantasy land. I wouldn't disclose, I wouldn't deny that there are, Mr. Patrushev and others. But we should take them out of that. If they consider their neighbors to be existential threats, they're going to be the one invasion after the other. There's no way that Ukraine is going to invade Russia. No one has ever thought in those particular terms. You said that Americans live peacefully. Yeah, Canadians are not going to invade. The Mexicans are not going to invade. You live in peace. There's no reason whatsoever why Russia and Ukraine should not be able to live in peace if just Russia gives up its imperial ambition.
What is your answer to this, John? How would you respond? Where are the smaller European states that sought protection from NATO and the EU once they had the opportunity when Russia was weak in the early 2000s, late 1990s? Where are they in your analysis? Wasn't this also
I'll answer your question, but I also want to deal with some of the points that Carmen. There's no question that states in Eastern Europe that were outside NATO wanted in. I don't blame Ukraine for wanting in. My point is we don't have to accept them. There's no rule that says just because somebody wants to be in NATO that we have an open door policy and we take them in.
And you didn't with Ukraine.
I actually don't believe that at all. We have actually doubled down.
They are not members of Ukraine, and no one has.
You have to let me answer the question.
Yes,
because,
sorry.
You raised a lot of excellent points, and I want to deal with them. But I think that if
again, we already have this at 1.5 speed.
Clear that the Russians view Ukraine in NATO as an existential threat, you should not admit Ukraine to NATO or push to admit Ukraine to NATO.
That's
because the end result.
Right? That seems so fucking obvious. Obviously, they did not use their entire force when they crossed the border into Ukraine. If they would have used their whole force, this is a different situation right now. They weren't trying to use their whole force. They weren't trying to do a full-on invasion. Oh my God.
Is what you have today. We, in effect, pursued a policy that is leading to the destruction of Ukraine. If we had not attempted to make Ukraine a Western bulwark on Russia's border, with NATO expansion, EU expansion, and the color revolution, but especially NATO expansion, there'd be, in all likelihood, no war in Ukraine today. Crimea would still be part of Ukraine, and certainly those 4 oblasts that the Russians annexed would be part of Ukraine. But I just want to go back to a couple points that Carl raised. First of all, I've gone over in great detail every one of Putin's speeches, press conferences, and his writings. And the argument that he was bent on incorporating Ukraine into Russia is usually said to be outlined in a famous article that he wrote on July 12th, 2021. You can easily find this article on the internet. And he did say many of the things that Carl said about how it was regrettable, how Lenin set up the Soviet Union, and so forth and so on. He does not say in that paper that he is interested in conquering Ukraine, that it's desirable to conquer Ukraine, or that's what he intends to do. In fact, if you go look at the article, and this is the article that almost everybody points to, you should go read it. He says that he recognizes Ukrainian nationalism. He says that he recognizes Ukrainian independence, and he says that the future of Ukraine is up to the Ukrainian people. That's what he says in the article that everybody points to is the key piece of evidence that he was out to conquer Ukraine. As I said to you before, I can find no evidence that he thought he could conquer Ukraine. Just a word or two about capabilities. He had 190,000 troops. It was almost all of his army, as Carl pointed out. You're not going to conquer a piece of real estate as large as Ukraine with an army that small. And he might have dropped bombs on Western Ukraine, but you can't conquer and occupy a country with bombs. You need ground forces to do that. He didn't have the ground forces. He never even attempted to conquer 1/2 of the country. At most, he attempted to conquer 1/3 of the country. He just didn't have the capability. This was not the Wehrmacht. Even with regard to Kyiv, he could not have conquered Kyiv with the forces that he had. It was just too small an army. He wanted to threaten Kyiv, but he couldn't conquer it. Now, just one final point, and then I'll turn it back to you, Cecilia. Carl said that if you look at what happened over the past few decades, it's a case of the East moving West and not the West moving East. I don't know how you can make that argument with NATO expansion. Of course it's the West moving East. NATO expansion, EU expansion, the color revolutions, where were the Russians moving westward? The Russians weren't capable of launching a military offensive in the 1990s. They were so weak, and then Putin comes to power in 2000, and over time he resurrects the Russians. He brings them back from the dead, but they don't have the military capability to go on the offensive. As you know, in the August 2008 military campaign in Georgia, the Russian army performed terribly. Right? They just don't have the military capability. There's no evidence that the East is moving West. It's the West that's moving East. And this is what presents an existential threat to the Russians.
But what about back 2007? That is...
I like the SWAT. Just please. Swats them away. Oh, all right. A couple more minutes of these guys, and then I think we're going to finish out with some comedy tonight. Jesus.
And Putin, in his speech in Munich, announced that in his view, the multipolar world was already arriving. Now, in your presentation, you said 2017. That is 10 years later. So isn't it a possibility that Putin, from that moment on, has that in mind as he goes forward from 2008 and then interprets things?
No, the famous Munich speech in 2007 that Cecilia is referencing is where Putin first makes it manifestly clear that he is angry at the West for their policies, which he thinks do not take into account Russian interests. But he does not indicate that he's going to rectify this problem by going on the offensive and attacking any country in the world. What sets off the real trouble is the April 2008 decision at Bucharest. This is the NATO summit at Bucharest, April 2008, where NATO says at the end of that summit that Georgia and Ukraine will become part of NATO. It's no accident, ladies and gentlemen, that in August 2008, you had a war in Georgia, and then starting on February 22nd, 2014, conflict broke out in Ukraine, right? That's what was driving the train here. And by the way, just one final point before I turn it to Carl. Angela Merkel and Nicolas Sarkozy were adamantly opposed to bringing Ukraine into NATO at the April 2008 Bucharest summit. And Angela Merkel has recently said that the reason she opposed bringing Ukraine into NATO is that she understood, listen to these words, she understood that Putin would interpret it as a declaration of war against Russia.
An act of aggression. That's what, I mean, Noam Chomsky started saying that in 2015. He said